Good morning and welcome to Church at Home with Rachael for Wednesday, the 7th of July. This morning I would like to talk about angels among us, and I'd like to begin with a little anecdote about a parishioner of mine from when I was in Sarnia. His name was Cal, and he worked his whole life, and he'd been in the Second World War in the Air Force, and he was a quiet, gentle soul with a beautiful, beautiful wife and a wonderful family he adored. And he did some carpentry work on the side, and he was kind of hard to get to know because he was really, really shy. And I remember he and his wife had me over for a cup of coffee one day, and she had to go and answer the phone, and she was gone for a little while. So Cal started talking about something that had happened to him in the war, and he told me that he really didn't tell many people about this, and I think it's safe to say I can share this now. This was about probably 15, 16 years ago. Cal was already older. I think he's since passed on. I imagine his wife has too. But he told me about being in the war, and he asked me, he said, "Do you believe in angels?" And well, of course I believe in angels, the seraphim and cherubim and all those things. He said, no. Do you believe in angels among us? And I said, "Well, I don't know, Cal. Why? Why do you ask?" And he said, I've seen one. I had an angel in my life." And he told me about a day when he was in the war, and they'd had some time off, and not enough time off to go someplace, but they had had some downtime, probably due to the weather. But they had some time off, and he was sort of hanging with his pals and doing his thing, and he got talking to this young woman. And he said she was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. She had this beautiful red hair, and she was feisty as she was as fiery as her hair was. And he was just enjoying talking to her. She was a driver, and she would drive folks, the air personnel, out to their planes when they had to go on missions. Well, this one day, he was, for whatever reason, he was up front in the cab rather than in the back of the milk cot or whatever they were using, and the rest of the crew was out the back there smoking cigarettes and doing their thing, but he was up in the cab with her as they were driving and getting to know her a little bit and really having a great conversation. He'd only known her for a little while, and they'd sort of socialized during downtime, but just on his own. But so she was the driver that day, and so she drove them out to the plane, and as all the crew got out from the back of the truck and went to start getting ready on the plane, get it ready to go for their mission, Cal stayed behind talking to her for a few minutes, and the rest of the guys just ignored him and they went about their business. But Cal was talking to her, and she said a few things to him that he didn't share with me, but he said that were really powerful, and they were very emotional for him, and they really gave him a lot of hope. And so he got on the plane. He was a tail gunner. He got on the plane, and they went off, and they had their mission, and it was he just said it was a tough mission. There were some injuries, and they were shot at, and he was okay, but they kind of limped back in. And when they got back, they got off the plane, they checked everything out. The folks who took care of the plane started to do that, and the crew climbed in the back of the truck to go back to their base camp. And Cal, looked around to see if this young lady would be his driver again, and she wasn't there, and thought, okay, well, he'd see her back at the camp. When he got back there, he started asking around, where was she? No one had ever seen this woman. The guys he talked to in the crew didn't remember it being a woman who drove them out to their plane. Cal believed that he had entertained an angel, that this young woman that he spent a little bit of time, but a powerful amount of time with, was someone that gave him hope and gave him something to look forward to when he came down out of the sky and back to earth. Someone that he wanted to talk to, someone that helped him to focus on the reason why he had to pay attention and he had to come home safely, was this woman. And so he believed that he had been entertained by angels. He believed because no one had ever seen or heard this woman, and no one remembered there being a woman driving them out to their plane in the first place. So for Cal, He didn't think he was crazy. He really believed he saw an angel. And then he gave me this. It's a little worse for wear. It's a little on the dirty side. It's missing an arm over the years, but Cal gave me this about 15, 16 years ago. And it's a garden. You stick it in the garden, and it's an angel. And he said he loved making angels because every time he made one, he thought of that angel who saved his life, the angel who helped him to come home, the angel that he focused on, that he could never find again. But he truly believed that he had been in the presence of an angel who gave him reason to come home. And he credited her for saving his life. And then he made angels and shared them with people he cared about. And so I've carried that angel. It's come from Stratford to Borden, to Halifax, to Round Lake, and now to Wainwright. And I don't think it got put out in the garden in Round Lake, but in Halifax or in other places it has been. And Rob found it the other day in the garage, and I came home from work, and there was my angel sitting pegged in my garden. And that reminded me as well of a couple of things. That when I was in my master's program, I did a program called CPE, Clinical Pastoral Education, where we worked in hospitals as chaplains. And one of my coworkers, the other chaplain, explained a time when she had been living in a big American city, and she'd been volunteering at a soup kitchen, and it was pretty late at night, and everybody else had gone home, and she decided she was going to walk back to where her residence was. And she was walking along, and she saw these two guys that sort of made her feel uncomfortable, and she kind of, held her purse closer to her, and she walked a bit faster, and they walked past her and checked her out, but kept on going. And for whatever reason, she stopped to look at a poster or something, and all of a sudden she heard someone screaming. So she ran ahead to find these two people trying to accost a young woman on the street. And as she started yelling herself and she scared them away, the police arrived, and someone had called the police, and they were apprehended. And so she went down to the police station to make her statement, her witness statement. And the police said that, asked the young men, that these two young hooligans who had accosted this other woman, she said, well, they walked right past me. Like, why didn't they attack me? When the police asked them what happened, they said, we're not idiots. Well, they were, but we're not idiots. She had those two guys beside her. They looked like big football players. She was walking by herself. To this day, she believes that she was guarded by angels. God provided to her two people. I would argue that she was an angel for the woman who was accosted, because she saved her from untold harm. I've had an experience myself when I was ordained a couple of years. We had a synod service at St. Paul's Cathedral in London, Ontario, at the Diocese of Huron. And in the evening, I was just going to go staying at my parents' house in London, so I wasn't in a big hurry to go home. But I had my vestment bag, and I came out of the great hall where we'd been having the big bun fight, the cookies and squares and coffee and lemonade. And as I was walking across the property of the cathedral, there was a gentleman standing there, and he asked me if I had some time. He didn't want any money or anything. He just wanted to talk to a priest. So there was a park bench there, so I sat down with him, and we talked for a very long time. We talked long enough that everyone else had gone home. The cathedral was being locked up, and a security guard who had been wandering around wandered past us a couple of times and stopped and asked me if I was okay. And yep, I'm okay. He kept keeping an eye on me. This gentleman told me he had been in prison and had just come out of prison, was staying in a halfway house, and he was asking me lots of questions about God and hope and forgiveness. And during this time, we had this incredible conversation that allowed me to know that I needed to change my thinking about other people. Taking time with this man who had seen many things and done many bad things, but was trying to turn his life around, was a gift to me. Well, he got up, and I said a prayer and blessed him, and he got up and went to walk away. And the security guard came by again and asked me if I was okay, and I said, sure. He said, you've been sitting there for an awful long time by yourself. I just wanted to keep an eye on you. I don't believe I was by myself. One more angel story to tell you. A year ago, yesterday I believe, Rob and I were on our way from Ontario to here for our house hunting trip, and we had to fly from Ottawa to Vancouver to fly Ottawa to Vancouver to fly back to Edmonton to get our rental car and come here to Wainwright, look for a house to live in. And so we flew from Ottawa to Vancouver, and something happened that Rob needed to step outside the terminal. So we had gone through security, and I was waiting at the gate, and we had lots of time. And there was nobody. It was like noon on a Sunday. There was nobody in the airport in Vancouver. Well, when he went to come back, I had called him to say, okay, they're going to call us to board soon. He said, okay, I'll be right back in. He came back in, and the whole terminal, for the entry point, the security gate, where you have to check, you have to dump all your pocket items and things like that. There must have been 1,000 people. Planes had come in and people were arriving, and they were leaving, and he got stuck there, and there was no way he was going to make the plane. I looked over and I saw the 2 Air Canada people at the desk as they're announcing the first class people can start boarding, and I saw another Air Canada personnel person standing. Her name was Mila, and she was standing off to the side. She was about 4 feet tall. I'm almost 6 feet tall, so it was like talking to her was like having to bend over, wearing masks and everything. But she was standing there, and no one was talking to her. No one was with her. And I went over and I explained what was happening and how worried I was that he was going to miss his flight, and how worried, I was pretty upset. And she said, just a minute. She said, what is he wearing? And I couldn't remember. So I called him, and he answered and told me. Said, go to this point, go to the checkpoint, and just stand there and wait for me. So he did, and she went down, and she went and grabbed him by the hand and dragged him through all of the people who were waiting, like the snaking line of like 1,000 people waiting to go through security. Dragged him through security, had them check him real fast, ran him upstairs, radioing ahead that they should wait the plane. I don't know if they did that. All I know is I had to board the plane, and they were announcing that they were closing the doors. And this little woman, Mila, this flight attendant came darting onto the plane, dragging my husband onto the plane, getting him seated, and then she came back and stood in front of me and gave me a hug and told me to have a good flight and good luck with what we're doing. And she was so glad that she could help me. And then she disappeared. No one else knew Mila. No one else could see her, I think. That the way she came on the plane, everything, people just sort of moved around her without noticing her. But the whole time she stood at the gate, waiting, I guess, for me to ask her for her help, where there was lots of people lined up asking the others for questions, but no one went to her. I think that God gave us Mila, an angel. I don't know how that works, and I don't know why angels don't sort of appear more often to people, but I do believe, I have had experience that angels are among us. How about you? I encourage you to think about the times when angels have been in your life, and maybe the times when you have been an angel to someone else. Maybe they're more prolific than we believe. Have a great day, and I pray that you find an angel today. And even better, I pray that you will be an angel to someone else today. God bless you. I will see you tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachael.